On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I become amateur economists. Let's go.
This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is the first one of 2023, and of course, this is your co-host, the notorious Rob Hahn, and with me, as always, the fabulous Greg Robertson. Woo!
Hola, Rob. How's it going, man?
Hola.
Good to see you.
Happy New Year, man. Happy
New Year.
2023. Here we are at last. We made it.
We made it. We made it. Yes.
We made it. Now, it's one of those, like, we made it, and did we just come out of the fire, the frying pan into the fire? I'm not sure, because 2022 sucked, right? And it was not a great time, but I don't know, man.
Yeah.
lot of fear and trepidation, and here we are, day 6, as we're recording this. And the news, like, I don't know. I think the news is all kind of, right?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, you could talk about just what's going on in the country, non-real estate, really. I guess it all affects it, everything. But
sure.
We don't have a Speaker of the House.
No.
That hasn't happened since old-timey times, like, when people were, like, wearing wigs and shit. And then
it's 2 years before the Civil War is actually last
exactly
time.
Right. Yeah. And you get these, like, crazy factions that are, like, going to be pulling some strings. I did see a tweet out there where I thought it was a great idea. Let's make Dolly Parton, the Speaker of the House, and like somebody to kind of bring us all together. So
yeah.
And then the other thing is just Amazon did a huge round, about 16,000. Salesforce
was it 16,000? I thought it was 18,000. It might be
18,000.
Okay.
Yeah. And then
many thousands.
Salesforce did like a 10% cut. And that to me is crazy because being at this company and others, I'm like, who cancels Salesforce? It's just like once you build into it, it's so sticky. Mm-hmm. It had to have been just a move to kind of get their EBITDA up or some shit, right? I mean, I don't know.
Or they're expecting bankruptcies.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's stuff there, and then that then kind of flows into some of our real estate stuff with
Compass.
Compass. I mean, a third round. I mean, just when you think that they were cutting to the bone, they're in the bone at this point, right? So. Yeah, that's kind of unfortunate. And
I've heard some rumors, like through friends, that this round of layoffs at Compass are agent facing. The previous rounds were sort of like back office technology, whereas this round are like agent facing. These are like the heart and soul of the Compass
agent
value
support.
proposition. Yeah. If that's true, man, I feel bad for those folks and. Pulling for Compass,
Some changes in leadership, too. Like, I think it was Glenn Stanford is stepping back into the role of CEO.
That's right.
And then Jason is kind of becoming more of an industry relations person. That's very different than I would say like a Keller Williams where, I mean, Gary just like, those guys are flogged and quartered and sent out, right? Where Jason's a good guy. I've been on a couple panels with him, and he's just a decent fellow, and I think it's just a little bit of shift there. And then one of our friends, Sharran,
that's right.
Srivatsa, that's right.
Sharran.
She's taken president of Real.
That's right.
I think I saw one of the founders of Real speak at the T3 thing they
probably
did here in Newport Beach. Yeah, and,
Tamir Polet.
Really smart guys.
Very smart. Mm-hmm.
And man, they are lucky to get something like Sharran. I mean, that guy is just so solid.
Yeah.
Hey
man, I wrote him up as one of my 7 most interesting people in 22 because, but here's the thing that's what like make me think is it's not obviously Sharran's amazing, right? But I got to give props and kudos to Tamir for convincing Sharran to come out of what was essentially a semi-retirement, right?
Yeah,
like he didn't need the hassle and the aggravation of like trying to run a brokerage. And I happen to know for a fact that he's been offered many jobs, right?
Yeah.
For Tamir to convince him, it's like, good job. Like that's a get.
And coming to this environment too, right?
Yeah. That's landing Tom Brady. That's
I mean, Sharran was always a good mentor to myself.
Yep.
I think you introduced us at first, and then I got to know him also, and he came out to a couple of the WNR events and spoke, and did a couple webinars with him, which were like, he broke our goddamn webinar platform because the number of people getting on it. So
Sure.
But shout out to Sharran. Just he's a good follow on Instagram too.
Absolutely.
Put that in the show notes. Solid thing. But
Yeah.
I mean, so overall though, kind of a creepy beginning to 2023. Just, I mean, this is first week and all this things drops, but we'll see what happens here, right?
And what's weird is like the only sort of semi good news we got was the employment numbers.
Yeah,
which came in way stronger than people expected.
And but the unfortunate part about that is that's the Fed looks at that and says, okay, people aren't losing their jobs, so we're going to keep the freaking pedal to the metal on this stuff, right?
That's right.
It's just crazy.
So it's like employment numbers come out, they're good, and then the market tanks. It's like, okay. It's like, oh my Lord.
Yeah.
So I don't know, man. So we'll see. I mean, I think in a couple weeks we're going to start talking about like the first big industry gathering of the year, which is Inman,
Right.
So, we'll think about what's in place by then. But, here we are early on, first week in January. And I know we kind of did the predictions for 23, with guests and such. But here we are after New Year's. Okay, the fireworks, all that's done. Like, what's your gut? Like, how are you feeling about 23?
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be tough for everybody. And there's a couple things is that I saw a tweet from Len Kiefer, I think his name is, and he does some stats for real estate. And remember the stat we heard, I think it was from Open Door at first, that the rate increases of mortgage rates was the biggest in 40 years. Turns out it was the biggest in 50 years, right? It was and
fastest, by the way.
Yeah, fastest, yeah.
Fastest and biggest, yeah.
Yeah, 3.2 percentage points over the course of a year, the biggest increase in over 50 years. The previous high was in 81, up 2.1, right? So, I mean, a big factor after that. And that is the story. That is the story going through that's going to go through 2023.
Yeah.
That is just going to be a tough thing to overcome. And as we talked about, and you really got this in my head, and I haven't really thought much more about it, but how much, we talked about the pie of what kind of transactions are. And Glenn Kelman just wrote something, he was just cited this morning about consolidation is happening, and that pie of a limited number of transactions. And really, the macro effects are the ones that are can really, put a damper on that.
Oh,
right?
for sure.
It's not like realtors are going to cold call themselves out of this. And especially if the macro environment can swing the number of houses sold in a year by 1 million homes. I mean, that's just nuts, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Here's the crazy ass thing, right? So unless I'm mistaken, we ended 22 with about 4.09 million. That was in November, right? We don't know what the December numbers are yet. That has to be reported.
So it'll be under 5, you think? Probably. I
way under 5. Right. I'm thinking we're going to end 2022 would have ended with probably, let's call it 4 million. Okay. 2021 ended with 6.1 million.
Well, yeah.
So in other words, in 1 year, we dropped a third of the transactions that disappeared.
Okay, but you got to put a caveat to that 2021 number was a pandemic, not hangover, but big boost, right? Because the pandemic happened in 2020. That hit the thing in March. We had the lull, and then boom, it just started going from that point all the way through 2021, skyrocket.
No, I get it, but even the skyrocket, right? Think about it. So 2021 ended with 6.1. 2020 ended, I want to say 6.5. 2020 was the skyrocket year, right? Mm-hmm. But the historical average has been around 5.5 for forever, right? So yeah, it's a lot, but it's only like a million. That's only like a 20% increase less than, right? So it went from 5.5 to 6.5, and then from 6.5 to went to 6.1, And then over the course of 1 year, we dropped by a third. We went to 4. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah.
I get you, right? I get it. You know, like the pandemic, it drove all this crazy demand, you know, work from home, you know, great reshuffling, all that stuff. And all, you know, all the money printing, all these people had money, so they bought homes. I get it. But still, the transactions went from like 5.5 to 6.5, right? And then from 6.5 to 6.1. And then over the course of a year, it didn't go to, like, I think I would have been like, okay, it's more normal if it went from 6.1 to we're moderating 5.5, right? Like, to me, that lends to, so maybe this is a conversation. Like, if 22 had ended with, say, 5.5, and then maybe 23 would be like 5, that's a soft landing, right? To go from 6.1 to 4, right? Like, and 23, there's a possibility we end up at 3 million for this year.
No way, dude.
Dude, absolutely a way.
No.
How do you figure?
I mean, okay, well, first of all, I mean, here's the thing. It's like, you have been teaching me this, right? So I feel like I'm you know, the professor here is like saying some stuff, and I'm like, well, okay, all this stuff has to do with the pandemic, right? Because that's what caused the money. That's what caused people with the work from home and the shift and migration. It's all having to still do with this kind of pandemic hangover. The interest rates going up is because we're printing money. Why are we printing money? Well, we were already printing money before, but it went on, you know, steroids once the pandemic had. So I look at everything. This is a moment in time in the country's history, in the world's history, that this thing happened, right? So everything, all the stats we're talking about, everything else, are not tied to anything other than that worldwide event. Whether, you know,
okay,
we can't get into, you know, have we learned any lessons later on if it happens again and everything else? Probably not. But I mean, that's what happened, right? So I don't see you trying to find any normalcy or you know, some sort of other than the numbers that we get. Now, I will give you this: if it goes to 3 million, or, you know, close to 3 million, it's still a hangover from what happened due to the pandemic, right? So I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but I mean, I don't think, you know, when was the last? We haven't looked at the stats. We should have did this beforehand. But when was the last time this country did, you know, 3 million?
It's 2011
homes, and still the other thing is, yeah, the interest rates are higher than 2.9% or 2.5, but they're still historically low. And I know that's a cliche, and everybody says that in the marketing materials, but it's still historically low. So, I mean, it's lower than when I bought a house, my first house. So, it's not, and the other thing is, there's still a supply problem. I mean, that could actually bolster your argument, right? But,
right.
Yeah, I don't see that. I mean, you know, you're just talking about we talked about before, the 4 Ds, right? Death, divorce, diapers, and diamonds, right?
That's right.
That's just going to happen normal.
That's right.
Right? People are going to have to move for whatever reason. So I think are the 4 Ds, you know, does that represent 3 million homes? Does that represent 4 million homes? I don't know. Somebody probably has that.
So let's actually talk through that, because I just wrote a post about this, right? Trying to think through like a market. Because, you know, I didn't do that for my 7 predictions, right? I didn't do like a housing market prediction. And I'm like, you know, I only look like an economist. I'm not actually an economist, but given the economist track record, I'm like, I feel just fine, you know, bullshitting myself too.
Yeah.
But so I was thinking about the 4D is such a great point. One of the things we're seeing, so Mike Simonsen, our friend Mike Simonsen from Altos Research, just put out
a big shout out to him. He just sold his company.
That's right. Housing Wire, I think.
The House Wire. Yeah. So, Mike, hey.
Congrats, Mike.
Man. Congrats to you, man. Yeah.
Yeah. But he's been doing some amazing work, you know, in terms of just getting some of these market stats out there. And he just did a YouTube video, which I watched. And we should think about maybe putting links to all that, you know, for those of our listeners who come on YouTube.
Yeah, it's a great follow for sure.
But what he talked about was that inventory levels were not what they were expected, right? In other words, the expectation was rates are rising, prices are starting to fall. You would think that people go, oh shit, let's not miss the market, right? If you wait, like home prices are going to be even lower. So let's put our house on the market. Let's sell it now, right? Before it goes any further down. And we're just not seeing that. We're just not seeing the type of inventory levels that we would expect to see, right? And so it's the 4Ds, like deaths, divorces, diplomas, diamonds. Is that right?
I think it's
diapers. There's diapers, right?
Yeah.
So 5Ds, right? Okay.
Diplomas. Okay. All right.
Diploma meaning like your kids have graduated, right?
Right.
So diapers don't matter, I don't think. Maybe
you got to upgrade. You got to upgrade, right?
Okay. So the issue becomes this: so many homeowners now are sitting on like 3% mortgage rates.
Yeah.
If they were to sell and buy another, now you're looking at 6.5%, 7% mortgage rates. So Sunny actually and I were talking about this recently because she got some email, someone from like some mortgage bank calling, hey, you've built up a lot of equity in your home. If you were to sell now and then upgrade, like blah, blah, blah. And we're looking at like, if we were to sell our house here in Vegas today, right? And then move into something, let's say we're going to downsize, like we're going to save some money, right? We're going to downsize, move something smaller. Our monthly payments would be $1,000 more.
Right.
There's no scenario where that happens.
Well,
right?
there is a scenario. If you live in California, and want to move to Texas or some other markets, if you wanted to move to Montana, or Wyoming, I'm sure you can make that math work for you, right?
Sure, geographic arbitrage, but I feel like most of the people who are easy, like who would have done that, have already done it during the initial 2020, 2021 work from home craze.
Again, have already done it. But again, there's still that 4D situation where it's not that they already did it. It's just the natural thing happens where you have to do it, whether you wanted to do it or not.
I know, but what I'm saying is like, let's do things with 4Ds. What's interesting is, okay, death, absolutely. Right. Like death means you're going to sell. Chances are. Unless death now means one of your kids will just say, you know what, I'll just live there.
Yeah, I'll move in, yeah.
Right, because it's so impossible to buy. Right. So that's a possibility. But for now, let's just say, okay, death results in a listing. Okay. Divorce likely results in a listing. Or not. Again, think about like, okay, you have a 3% mortgage rate. You know what I mean? If you were to buy something new, now you're looking at 7, it's going to double your payments, etc. Say you get divorced. It used to be you get divorced and the couple's like, okay, fine, we're going to sell the house, we're going to split the proceeds, right? And we'll go our own way. Going forward, I could easily see divorce meaning, okay, you know what? I'm going to keep the house. I'll pay you out, right? Rather than selling the house and then us both going.
Yeah, it's getting which party gets the house.
Correct, right.
We already know.
And then, right, correct. I think that's much more likely in divorce just because of the situation now, right?
Right, but I mean, that means the other person still has to get housing, right? So, I mean.
But I know, but the important thing is that the house is not going to get sold.
Right.
In other words, we're not going to see inventory.
I mean, you're talking about, these are blips on the, the kind of radar here, right?
What do you mean blips on the?
Well, I mean.
Okay, so deaths. So all I'm saying is deaths. Okay. I'm going to grant deaths will result in a listing. I'm just trying to think of the Ds that will result in a listing, right? In inventory. I actually think divorce is not going to result in inventory.
You know what? Everybody tells me, you know why, divorce is so expensive?
Why?
Because it's worth it. Okay, so
sure.
So I think anybody in that situation, it sucks. I'm going to lose a lot of money, but God damn it, I want this person out of my life. Right?
That's right. All I'm saying is like, so when I got divorced in 2011, guess what? It created a listing, right? Because we had to sell the family home, and then I took mine, and then she took hers, and then she went and bought her next thing. I'm saying going forward, it's like today, if it were to happen in 2023, it's like she'll keep the home. She'll pay me out, whatever our lawyers negotiate as being my share of it, and then I'll go try and buy a home.
But I mean,
I'm saying it doesn't create a listing.
That's saying that she would have enough money to buy you out. She might have to go get a loan, and that's going to be, another mortgage, which is going to be at the new interest rate.
Or who knows how it's going to play out. All I'm saying is now the incentive to keep the house is super
overall
strong.
Totally, absolutely, overall totally, right. Not just divorce, but everybody. Yeah.
Right. So I think divorce is not likely to create a listing or as many listings. Right.
Okay.
Diplomas, I think, will not create listings because it used to be the empty nesters. Like, hey, we have this 4-bedroom house. We raised 3 kids. Right. and the last of them graduated high school and went off, right? Now they're in college. Now it's just the two of us in this big ass house. Let's sell it. Let's downgrade to something more modest that works for us, right? Promise, I don't think that's going to happen now, because now that couple's going to be sitting there like, well, if we were to sell this beautiful family home and move into a 2-bedroom condo, our payments go up.
Yeah.
That makes zero sense, right?
And here's the other thing is a lot of times Junior, who just graduated, is coming back home anyway.
That's right. That's right.
Which is something that, which Glenn Kelman had said in his article where, it's a roommate nation, or, people aren't leaving, people aren't leaving their mom's house or their parents' house as soon as they used to.
Right. So I don't think diplomas create listings the way it used to, right? Okay, what about diapers? Hey, we had a baby, we need to upgrade. Thing is, if you sell your house and you buy a bigger house, now your monthly payments have just gone absolutely insane through the roof. It's likely cheaper to think about going and getting a home equity line of credit and adding a room to your current house. Yeah. Right.
No, I mean, overall, what you're getting to is that, not just the 4Ds, but overall, that the fact that a lot of people are in a with a good interest rate, it's just going to keep pressure down on people moving. The mobility percentage is going to go down, right?
Mobility will go down, and I think basically fundamentally, I'm saying I could really see for existing homes, the pressure to sell is going to incentive to sell is it's like I can't think of it being lower, right. So you literally have to be in some bizarre situation. Again, you died, the kids don't want your house, they live too far away, so it's an estate sale. It's a divorce, and the house is so big that neither party really wants it. Like, it's going to have to be some bizarre situation is what I'm getting at. So the inventory from existing homes, I think we're going to go through like even greater crisis than we did in 2021. Remember, like even before the pandemic, all the agents, all the brokers were bitching about inventory. We don't have an inventory. We don't have inventory, right? Nobody wants to sell. And this is when homes were like selling at a huge premium, and you could like sell your house and, upgrade for 3%, right? Now, like, what's the incentive to sell, right? And what's interesting, Sonny raised this point in a recent conversation we're having. It's like, if you're a real estate agent, if you're a listing agent, right, can you recommend to your seller to sell in good conscience? Like, what's a scenario where if you are doing a fiduciary duty, right, and telling the homeowner what's in their best interest, what's a scenario where they would say you should sell your house?
Yeah.
Right? It's really tough. Now,
listen, fiduciary responsibility. There are things that, I've been in situations where I paid higher than I should have because of a circumstance, right? Doesn't mean that the person who advised me on that was like not following, I was moving from Florida back to California.
Of course.
And it was right in the whole, 2009-ish, right? 2010. And, I was going to have to, pay $9,000 to get out of it.
Yeah.
But I wanted to get back to California. The agent wasn't, not following their fiduciary responsibility by doing that transaction. It's just what had to happen, right? So, there are events that are going to, they're going to have to, that happen that they have to assist them in.
No, of course. All I'm saying is like fiduciary responsibility means whatever's in your principal's best interest. So if the principal's best interest is, hey, you know what, I need to sell, right? Then of course you do that. All I'm saying is, what's the scenario where you would recommend, hey, you should sell your house, right? Let's put it this way. I think it's really difficult to imagine a scenario where a listing agent could with a straight face go to a homeowner and say, you should sell your house and upgrade. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Now, if the homeowner's like, no, I don't care that I'm paying more. I don't care because we've had it. I need to sell this, and I'm willing to pay a lot more at a much higher rate to move into something more. Like, okay, no, cool, I get that, right? Or I think most of those people,
they're gonna, with the appreciations that has been. What? Here's what I'm gonna do. I have $1 million equity in this house.
Yep.
I'm 60.
Yep.
I'm going to cash this fucking thing out, and I'm going to move to a condo and rent. That scenario works.
Correct. Right.
Yeah. There's some scenarios that, beyond the geographic kind of stuff you talked about that can work. But I mean, but your point is taken. Yeah. Your point is the pool is much smaller.
Way smaller.
And there's still a shit ton of agents, 1.5, 1.6.
Correct.
And then it doesn't look like the Fed's going to stop.
Correct.
And with that thing, which is going to affect, even though they say it doesn't affect, it's going to affect. Inflation is going to affect the interest rates, right? So
not only that, but there was something.
It's a perfect storm, basically, right?
Perfect storm, and there was something that one of my favorite analysts, his name is Eric Basmagian, I think is his name, from a company called EPB Macro Research. They do phenomenal work, and he focuses a lot on housing. So he's like a housing economist as well. And he pointed something out in a recent video that I was like, wow, I didn't realize. So obviously mortgage rates are based on the 10-year treasury, right? But the spread, in other words, the rate of a 30-year mortgage and the 10-year treasury has never been this, or it hasn't been this wide for like 40 years or something like that, right? So what the implications, like why would that be, right? Why would mortgage rates be so much higher in spread to the treasury? The implication is that a lot of the lenders are thinking there's a default risk. In other words, treasuries in theory is like perfectly safe. Like the United States was never going to default, right? So that's a risk-free rate that I can get. With mortgages, it used to be, sure, there's risk, but it's very, very small, right? People are going to default on a lot of other stuff before they default on their mortgage.
Well, right? GFC kind of threw that,
a little bit. But the other thing that, right? But the other thing, man. Yeah, but the other thing is unemployment. In other words, it used to be, like, look, what's the chance of you losing your job? It was way lower, right? Like, it could always happen. Like, it's always a risk, right? The implication of this spread is that a lot of the lenders, a lot of the finance guys are saying the economy's going to go into the tank, and a lot of these good people, right? They're trying to do the right thing. They're not going to be able to because they're laid off or their company's gone bankrupt or what have you, right? Which is why the spread is so much higher.
Yeah. Then the other thing, though, is that from what I hear is that at any point in history, there hasn't been a time where people have had more equity in their homes than they do now.
Sure.
Because the appreciation and everything else. So there's that. And I think debt is lower than it has been in a while, right?
I don't know if that's true, but okay, let's say that is okay.
Okay.
But that doesn't create any incentive to sell.
No. But I mean, I'm just saying this whole thing of like you're saying people are going to start defaulting. I mean, if you have equity in your home, there are ways that you can kind of rejigger that.
No, that's not what I'm saying. No, yeah. You're misapplying. I'm saying new borrower.
Oh, okay, yeah,
right. Well, first time home buyer.
Yeah. So you're all. This is all, and I get where you're going here. This is where you're getting 3 million homes.
Right.
Could be a possibility.
It's not out of the question, right? Because of this perfect storm. So you have existing homeowners saying, I have no incentive to sell. So like no matter what buyers may exist, there's very little to buy. From the buyer standpoint, rates are so high. My job prospects are, whatever. It's risky. The banks are like, hey, if we're going to loan you money, it's going to be at 8%, whatever it is, right? Now you're priced out of markets. And even if you did want to buy a home, you go look at homes that you could afford and the loans you qualify for. Like, I don't want to live here, right? Yeah. I don't want to live here. And most people aren't going from renters to buyers just for the hell of it, right? They're doing it because of the D's, right? Hey, we just had a baby. We need to move out of this 2-bedroom apartment.
Right.
And it's like, yeah, but now with the changes in rates and whatever else, the home we can afford is this like double wide.
Right.
In a crime-ridden neighborhood. We don't want to do that. We'll just keep renting. So all of these perfect storm type things suggest like, yeah, dude, let's put it this way. If at the beginning of last year, January of 22, Fed says, hey, we're going to raise rates. If you had told me then that in January of 23, right now, we're going to be talking about potentially 3 million homes sold in 2023, I would have been like, you're crazy. You're smoking crack, right? Now I'm looking at like, dude, 2022 ended with 4 million. It's not, I hope it doesn't happen. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm just saying it's not inconceivable that we get to 3 million this year.
I think I think January sales, because, Q4 was whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, if
exactly.
I think we look at the end of January and we see if we're, how that is.
I don't think it's January. It's typically March, right? In other words, the spring season doesn't really begin until April.
But if you have to sell, think about that though, Rob. If you're going to sell 1 million less than last year, right? You're talking about 250,000 homes less each quarter, right?
Quarter, yeah.
Right. So, if you looked at that, you're going to find out what are those January's numbers? Are they tracking to that a third of 250? I think you can look at January and say if it's like right on for 4, right on for 5, to make up that difference to really, if you go in the spring season, that's when typically the thing goes historically up. So you need these other times for it to go really down to really kind of show you that indication. So I think we'll know more here at the end of January into February whether or not that if it's tracking that way, because it's going to go up in the spring.
Correct.
Yeah.
We'll have an idea. All I'm saying is we know that the winter, and then January, February typically is slow. We know that cyclically, but by sort of February, March is when people start getting ready for the spring season. I think we're going to know a lot by listings in March. Right. In other words,
number of listings,
right? In other words, if this whole theory about sellers and their incentive, if we are seeing, let's say, listings at 50% below 22 levels, then we're in trouble. You know what I mean?
That would be crazy. But
correct. So we'll find out. All I'm saying is the 4Ds, the 5Ds, I get it. And this has been eternal. And those things will always be eternal because it's about human nature, right? Death, we're all going to die. Divorce that happens, diplomas, it's all about just human life cycle. And I'm those are going to still stay in place no matter what happens. People are going to get married. They're going to have babies. They're going to get divorced. They're going to die. All those things are going to happen. It's just that the peculiarity of what's happened says to me, the incentive to sell is at the lowest point ever. And the ability to buy is getting worse and worse and worse. So we could see that.
What I like to do is get a Slack channel going or just a site where let's take the number of this would be great. So follow me on this one, bro.
Okay.
Maybe somebody knows how to set this up. We could do this.
Pull your mic closer, by the way.
Oh, sorry. And forget not a fantasy football, but where we have 4 criteria. Okay, what by the end of 2023, what are the number of homes going to be sold, right? Total. What is the interest rates going to be?
Yeah.
Right. What's another factor that we always talk about? What's the inflation rate going to be? Right. And what else has to do with real estate? Are we in a buyer's or seller's market, right? Have those 4 things and have everybody kind of I guess we'd have to get more numerical, but, and just do wagers, some death pool or something, right? And
so I was just thinking, man,
we get a lot of industry guys to go and put in a couple $100, and at the end, we see what happens, right?
I was actually just thinking, it's not legal in the US, but I know in Europe, UK has these prop bets sites where you can bet on weird things like election outcomes, and I'm sure there's a bet right now who's going to be the Speaker of the House, right? Those types of bets. Well, I bet we could go on UK and set that up.
Well, the thing is here, it's just you could just have a site that does this, and then everybody settles through Venmo, right? It doesn't have to you just have to
illegal.
Go there. Everybody could put, I can make a site that says, hey, here's a poll I want to take.
I'm just saying it's illegal.
You're talking to the wrong guy here, I guess.
No, it's a great idea. I would love to do it. I'm just saying under U.S. law, if an American company does it, it's illegal.
Yeah, don't we have you and I have a steak dinner bet, but I've already forgotten what the bet is about.
It was an iBuyer. I'm definitely going to lose that. It was by 2024, I think. So I'm definitely losing that. I'm happy to buy steak for my friends. Yeah. Okay. But then again, when I made the bet, I didn't count on the Fed doing what it's like. It's all right. Yeah. None of those things. So I just wrote this post, and I thought, you know what, just for shits and giggles, I want to share this with you and get your thoughts on it. So obviously, if you're just listening on podcast audio, this might be a time where you head on over to YouTube and come check us out so you could see this chart that I'm showing Greg here. So this is one of the things I started doing, right? And here's what's interesting. Like this is
Case-Shiller, right?
Case-Shiller versus the United States M2 money supply, right? Because, my theory is that home prices never went up. It's all about the dollar being devalued. So what's interesting is 2022, and again, the data's incomplete, it's through October, so we don't have November and December numbers, but, through October, the money supply actually went down, right? It actually went down by about 2.5%. So that's this yellow line here. The blue line is home prices, and that's one of the things I'm seeing. Correct. It's way steeper. So home prices fell off off a cliff, and the money supply just went down. Obviously, the implication is because of rates went up so dramatically high, right? You control the money supply through rates. Okay, Fed raised rates really, really fast. Mortgage rates spiked. So, home prices went plummeted. So the question is, and this is the thought experiment I was doing, is if I'm right that the home prices track money supply, we should actually see this number, right, get to about here, the 4% down by the end of 23s, right? Which implies that home prices should actually climb up a little bit from where they were in October. If on the other hand, it follows that same trend, we're going to be down 22%.
Right.
Which brings us to
going. Well, that's right. 2023. Yeah, you're right.
Right.
Okay.
So that's the implication. My bet is that it's going to do this, right? My bet is that I think home prices will end down about 4%. In other words, it'll sort of flatten out because the money supply, it'll follow the money supply. That'll be, trend.
According to your chart here, that'll be beginning of 2022 is where it ends up.
Beginning, no, it'll end up.
No, sorry, that went up 4%. Sorry.
Yeah.
No.
It'll end up, kind of like around, March of 22 levels.
Right.
Right. So it's permanently higher. It's, on the other hand, there's an idea where it could be 22% down. And the issue is this. I don't think transaction numbers are impacted by this. So we could still see 3 million transactions. The question is at what price? Right. So if you have 3 million transactions at 20% below the peak, that's a disaster, right? Well, that's an economic crisis.
That's right. But this is really tied to money, because you're saying less transactions at more money a piece. That doesn't make sense. So this is going to be affected by, if it's 3 million, this thing is going to drop off a cliff because you're not going to get more money from less transactions, right? So
I'm saying you can though, because
then you're down your 21%, right? You're 22%.
No, not at all. In other words, if supply is low enough, then prices won't be suppressed as much.
Right, but I mean, you're talking a factor of 1 million from 4 to 3. I mean, it's a lot.
Right, but that implies, so if it's not because buyers, in other words, what everyone's thinking, what everyone's expecting right now is the last major housing collapse we had was the bubble, right? Where people had to sell because they were getting foreclosed on. Right. I don't see that happening this time around. No. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't see it. So what we're then saying is that people who are putting their house on the market are doing it because they have to, right? For all the reasons we discussed. Well, if you have to put it on the market, then are you willing to take whatever lowball offer? Probably not. The supply is low. And the question is going to be, are there buyers? And of course, the answer is there are going to be some buyers. At least there'll be investor buyers. Right. Once prices get low enough, they'll be like, okay, yeah, I'll buy it at that because I know I'm going to cash flow out of that. Right. So we'll see. And I know, and a caveat, because I see this every time housing market comes up. Some realtor's going to talk about national housing stats are completely useless. Real estate's local market, local. Yes, all true. And none of this may apply in your local market. Who the hell knows? We know if Phoenix is just getting hammered right now. Yeah. We know other markets are doing just fine, so we get it. I'm just saying at a national level here at the trend.
Okay, so I know, in your Rob Hahn way, you're saying that there is a scenario where the number of houses sold in 2023 is around 3 million.
Yeah.
What would you say though? I mean, you have that. There is that scenario, but what do you? If you're going to predict, let's say here's another steak dinner bet, right? So,
okay.
What do you think the number of homes being sold in 2000? You said there's a possibility it could go to 3, but what do you think in your gut? What would be your steak dinner bet on this?
Are we doing like an over under?
Yeah, sure.
Give me the number. Give me the number. I'll tell you.
Well, no, maybe not an over and under. You give me
But then how do I win the bet?
Right. I would say 4.5.
4.5 million for 2023.
Yes.
I'll take the under.
Okay. I will take the over.
Okay. So there's our steak dinner bet.
All right. Okay. Okay.
And we have documented this. So.
Oh, yeah. All right. Very cool.
Now, here's the thing, man. That would be a bet that I'm happy to lose.
Yeah. Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you were saying 3, and I know that you were saying there's a scenario there, but
right.
None of us want that shit to happen, right?
No, none of all of us would want it to be 6. And here's the thing, and here's the interesting thing. There's a scenario where the number is like 6.5, right? And that scenario is a Fed pivot.
Yeah,
that scenario is where the
there's
Fed.
No signs.
I know that's what I'm saying.
It's going to pivot. Yeah.
Zero. Everything coming out of the Fed is like, we're not pivoting. We're sticking with this. We need to kill inflation, right?
Yeah.
But there is a scenario where the Fed pivots.
Yeah. The story to me is like, if the jobs numbers are strong, I think is that the CPT comes in and inflation is still up. I think there's a chance they might go back to 75 basis points.
There's a chance.
And then we're fucked.
However, let me give you a scenario where there could be a Fed pivot. Okay. What happens if Congress refused to raise the debt ceiling?
Yeah, that's always a threat that never happens. It's a hollow that you're talking about. That wouldn't happen until September of this year, right? That was to be the next time that they start running out, or October, I forget.
Just saying,
Yeah.
Then
that's why you're on this podcast, Rob, to bring those things up.
So look, like I said, so we did the 4.5. I hope I lose. I hope the number is actually like 5.
Yeah, I think it's be closer to 5 myself. Yeah.
That would be really, really nice. That would be great for the industry. That would be great for, like that would be awesome. I think the harder, more difficult line would have been 3.5.
Yeah.
I don't know where I go on that, but thank you for saying 4.5, so I could easily take the under. Boy, we probably bored the shit out of like everybody listening, huh?
Well, we've got. I mean, this is our first one of the year.
Yeah.
We'll probably have an Inman preview the week before Inman.
Yep.
And maybe
working on a special guest. I'm working on a special guest because I want to get a real economist on. I have a couple questions that,
okay,
that I would love to.
Instead of us amateurs, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know I don't know who you're talking about, but we'll see what happens.
It's hard to find the right economist. The problem, right? Because let me pose this question, and we'll end on this question, right? Which is what I'm trying to work on. Okay, and the question is this: if the petrodollar system collapses,
oh God, here we go again.
What happens to U.S. housing?
Okay, all right, gold for.
I can't answer that question, right?
You
can't answer that question.
I can't even understand the question. So yeah.
So, which is why we need an economist to come on and help us think through. Again, not that it's going to happen, but if it does, then what does that do to housing? That's the question, right? So, if anyone listening has ideas around that, please let us know. I would love to know, if we should invite you on, or if you know somebody we should invite on who's like an expert in this type of analysis.
Yeah. Fringe, baby, fringe.
Hey, man, it was great to see you. And
you too, man. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Thanks to all of our listeners. We're looking forward to an amazing 2023.
And we are looking for a new sponsor. We had, great Rent Spree brought us out through the end of the year, but we are now looking actively for another sponsor. And if you think that you would like to join us and our beautiful audience, our beautiful, smart people that listen to the podcast, I think reach out to to me if you can, and we'll get you suited up for the next episode. Thank you.
Sounds great. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.